I stand in the middle of my sister Lily's wedding reception, the air thick with shock and silence. Jason, Lily's new husband, has just snapped to attention and saluted me, declaring, "Major General, ma'am." The title hangs in the air, a thunderbolt shattering the comfortable illusions my family has clung to for so long. My parents' faces are a mask of confusion and disbelief, their smiles frozen in place. How did we get here? It's a question that echoes in my mind as I'm thrust back into the past, a journey through 15 years of unspoken pain and unacknowledged achievements. I'm Ava Thompson, 36 years old, and I've spent half my life building a military career that my family knew nothing about until this very moment. I grew up in a small town in Texas, in a modest ranch-style house on the outskirts of town. My father, Robert, was a stern and traditional man, a local bank manager who believed in the importance of stability and conformity. My mother, Carol, was a kind but conservative woman, a homemaker who dedicated her life to raising me and my younger sister, Lily, now 32. From the outside, we were the perfect American family, but beneath the surface, there was a tension, a divide between my dreams and their expectations. Lily was the golden child, the one who followed the path laid out for her. She was polite, obedient, and excelled in school. My parents had always envisioned her as a teacher or a nurse, a caregiver who would build a family and a community. Lily embraced these expectations wholeheartedly, graduating from college with a degree in education and landing a job at the local elementary school. I, on the other hand, was the rebel. From a young age, I was fascinated by the military, inspired by my grandfather, Henry, a World War II veteran who had served with distinction. He was a quiet but proud man, a man who had seen the world and come back changed. Whenever he visited, we would sit on the porch swing, and he would tell me stories of his time in the war, stories of courage and sacrifice that ignited a fire in my soul. My parents, however, did not share my enthusiasm. They saw the military as a dangerous and unstable career path, a path that would take me away from home and put me in harm's way. When I announced my decision to join ROTC in high school, they were horrified. My mother cried, and my father raged, insisting that I was throwing away my future. But I was determined. I knew that this was my calling, my destiny. With my grandfather's support, I applied to West Point, the prestigious military academy. When I received my acceptance letter, my parents refused to celebrate. Instead, they issued an ultimatum. If I went to West Point, I would do so without their financial support or their blessing. I didn't hesitate. I packed my bags and left home the next day, driven by a sense of purpose and a desire to prove myself. West Point was a challenge, both physically and mentally. The training was brutal, and the isolation was overwhelming. But I found solace in the camaraderie of my fellow cadets, in the shared sense of purpose and sacrifice. Over the next 15 years, I rose through the ranks, earning a reputation as a strategic thinker and a natural leader. I was deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan, where I witnessed firsthand the horrors of war and the resilience of the human spirit. I led missions that saved lives and made a difference, but I kept these achievements to myself, afraid of facing my parents' disapproval. Then, the invitation arrived. Lily was getting married, and she wanted me to be her maid of honor. Despite my reservations, I couldn't say no. I requested leave and flew home, dreading the inevitable confrontation with my parents. The days leading up to the wedding were a blur of tension and awkwardness. My parents treated me like a stranger, avoiding any mention of my military career. Lily, caught between loyalty to her family and love for her sister, tried to bridge the gap, but her efforts were in vain. It was at the reception that the tension finally boiled over. As I watched my parents dismiss my achievements and praise Lily's, I felt a familiar anger rise within me. But before I could say anything, Jason stepped in, his voice cutting through the noise. "Major General Ava Thompson," he said, his voice clear and confident. "The youngest female general in the United States Army, a woman who has served her country with distinction and honor." The silence that followed was deafening. My parents stared at me, their eyes wide with shock. For the first time in my life, I saw a glimmer of pride in their eyes, a recognition of the woman I had become. In that moment, I realized that the battle I had been fighting for so long was not just with my parents, it was with myself. I had been hiding my true self, afraid of rejection and disappointment. But now, standing in the spotlight, I felt a sense of liberation, a freedom from the chains of the past. As the night wore on, the tension began to ease. My parents apologized, their words filled with regret and remorse. They admitted that they had been wrong, that they had been so focused on their own fears and expectations that they had failed to see the person I had become. Over the next few days, we began to rebuild our relationship, one conversation at a time. My parents asked questions, and I answered them honestly, sharing stories of my deployments, my achievements, and my struggles. Lily listened, her eyes filled with pride and admiration. It wasn't easy. There were still moments of tension, of old wounds resurfacing. But for the first time in my life, I felt like my family was truly seeing me, accepting me for who I was. 6 months later, I stood on a stage at Fort Hood, receiving a medal for my service in Afghanistan. As I looked out at the audience, I saw my parents, their faces beaming with pride. In that moment, I knew that the journey ahead would be long and difficult, but I also knew that we were on the right path, a path towards healing and reconciliation. The road to acceptance is never easy, but sometimes all it takes is one moment of truth to change everything. And as I look back on that night at Lily's wedding, I realized that it was not just a moment of revelation. It was a turning point, a moment when I finally found the courage to be myself, to embrace my true identity, and to let my family into my world.